Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We had what was potentially an NBA Finals preview last night that turned into a blowout of a game as the Golden State Warriors really just put it to the Brooklyn Nets. The Warriors have been on an absolute tear to start the season, Sap, and the Nets have been, I think, sort of pacing themselves a little bit, but certainly you would think they'd get up for that game last night, but it was all Golden State.
Yeah, 117-99 from the third quarter on. It was a blowout. Golden State this year, Jet, is outscoring their opponents by nearly 10 points per game in the third quarter alone. That's what Golden State did when they were going to the finals 5 years in a row. Just remember, every game seemed to be close in the first half. They'd come out in the third quarter and blow doors. And that's what they did again last night. Steph Curry's playing better than he's ever played. I think Kevin Durant's playing better than he's ever played. He didn't have a really good night last night against his old team. And the rest of the Warriors, it just seems like they're fitting together perfectly. And this is all without Klay Thompson, who is expected back around Christmas. And even if Klay isn't what Klay was 3 years ago, that's still a nice addition around Christmas time. The Warriors look spectacular. They're 12-2, playing well on the road, playing well at home. I mean, they look like the best team in basketball right now. We're only a month into the season. I get it, but all the pieces are fitting with Golden State. My biggest takeaway from that game last night, Jet, was you see the difference in coaching, right? Like Steve Kerr actually coaches the team. They have a system. They play within that. Now, Steph Curry makes the system work because he's exceptional. Brooklyn really doesn't make adjustments. They're just kind of there with Steve Nash. So I think a big difference between the two teams, Steve Kerr, a real coach, as opposed to Steve Nash, who's just kind of a figurehead on the sideline. Durant and Curry are the headliners. The rest of the Golden State team better than Brooklyn's team because James Harden looks still out of shape and a shell of himself, and Kyrie's nowhere to be found. So right now, Golden State looks like the best team, and they kind of proved it last night against Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about it as a finals preview, then you would say, okay, it's going to be a sweep if these two teams meet in the finals, if the games go like that. Obviously, well, neither team's really at full strength. We don't know that Brooklyn will ever be at full strength because no one really knows what the Kyrie situation is going to be. And so this could very well be their team for the remainder of the season without Kyrie Irving. Again, it's just trying to predict what he does is like trying to predict the weather in 3 years is just impossible to do. But certainly Golden State looks very impressive to start the season. I know, Sap, that we did a buy or sell, I think a couple of weeks ago about Golden State, and you bought them. I sold them. It does appear I'm looking a little bit foolish right now, but I'm still, maybe I'm crazy. I'm still not fully on the Golden State train. I think they're obviously better than last year. I think they're really good. I'm not ready to anoint them as the NBA champions or the Golden State Warriors from, 4 or 5 years ago yet. I think that, well, actually, I know this. They've played up until last night where they played a quality opponent. They have played the NBA's easiest schedule so far. So I think that's, part of it. And I think that, a team like Golden State that isn't integrating a lot of new players. I mean, they're integrating some interesting new bench pieces, but for the most part, these guys who are on the Warriors have been there for a while. I think that makes things easier. The coach has been there for a while. That makes things easier. And in addition to that, they had a nice long off season. They didn't make the playoffs last year. They made the play-in. So I think all those things are probably contributing to them starting out 12-2, which is just a tremendous record. I do feel like there is going to be a dip at some point. Maybe they'll just run roughshod through the league again, Sap, but I kind of feel like there's going to be a dip at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a 70-win team, which they're kind of on pace for right now. I don't think they're that. I don't even know if they'll win 60 games. I think it's going to be difficult to win 60 games in the NBA today because the schedule doesn't always favor you. There's going to be pockets in there where you want to rest some of your superstars. Maybe when Klay comes back in December, there's some adjustment period, although I doubt that because he and Steph Curry just work so well together. But maybe you get Klay back in December and you give Steph a little time off and we'll see what the situation is with Draymond Green, who does what he does, right? He plays defense, he rebounds, he facilitates, he does all of those really good things. They're integrating a young player like Jonathan Kuminga, who I was really impressed with last night. Had a couple of blocks, very, very active. He's only 19 years old, so they'll bring him along slowly. Andrew Wiggins is fitting in nicely as their fourth best player, which is perfect for him. Let's not forget they don't have James Wiseman either, who showed a lot as a rookie last year. So I think they're still dangerous, but I don't see this as a 70-win team, and I don't think they're just going to breeze through the Western Conference. You look at Phoenix is playing really well. Denver's right there, and at some point we expect the Lakers to get their act together. It may not come till the trade deadline because I'm under the impression that the Lakers, if they keep playing like this, a 500 team that had 12 of its first 15 games at home, by the trade deadline or maybe before that, they're going to start trading people. That's exactly what they're going to do, because LeBron did this in Cleveland 4 years ago. Remember at the trade deadline? He traded out 5 players for 5 other players, and they went to the finals. Expect the same thing for the Lakers if it doesn't work. The only problem is the guy that's not making this work right now is Russell Westbrook, who I think is untradeable. But that's another discussion for another day. And later in the week, we're going to do a podcast really focusing on the Celtics and Lakers, who meet Friday night, and both teams have been disappointments this year. But as far as Golden State, they look really, really good. And again, their offense is a joy to watch. I'm watching Steph Curry last night, Jet, and the reason he's such a great player, in addition to being the greatest shooter ever, he has this magnetic pull against his opponents. There were many times down the court last night, he was being double teamed 35 feet from the basket without the basketball. In that situation, Golden State is a 4-on-3. They're going to score. That's how good he is and how much attention he draws. It's like a great wide receiver who runs deep and takes and the safety with him, and it opens up everything in the middle of the field for the tight end or another receiver. That's the impact that Steph has on the game of basketball, and among the many reasons why he's changed the game more than anyone since Will Chamberlain. So that part of it, as long as he's healthy and productive like he is, they're going to be right there in contention. But again, this is not Golden State of 4 or 5 years ago where they just blow through everyone, because they also had Kevin Durant on that team, a nice co-star for Steph Curry.
Yeah. Seth, before we get into comparing those two guys, because I know you had an interesting poll question on your social media about Curry and Durant and their careers, I just want to ask you, what do you think the difference has been this year between Golden State from last year and this year? Why they struggled a lot and often last year and obviously didn't make the playoffs, and why this year they're off to such a hot start? Again, Klay Thompson obviously can't be the answer because he hasn't played.
No, I mean, no Klay Thompson last year, no Klay Thompson this year. I think Draymond is pretty much what he is, right? I mean, he does all the dirty work. He'll get your rebounds, he'll pass, he'll play defense. He's not going to really light up the scoreboard. They've got Andre Iguodala back, who, again, is kind of like Draymond Green. He's not going to score a lot of points, but he does all the other things, the ball movement, the screens, playing good defense. And I think that Andrew Wiggins has really stepped up this year. He's playing more like the player we expected when he was drafted first overall. He's never going to live up to that hype. When you're the first overall pick in a pretty good and deep draft like he was in 2014, you expect him to be a multiple-time All-Star. He's not. But when Klay Thompson comes back, he's going to be the 4th or 5th best player on this team, and that can be very, very scary. So I think a lot of the other players who have had the opportunity to play a little bit more with Steph, like Andrew Wiggins, have really grown in their games. And Steph's even player better than he was a year ago, which is scary because he finished 3rd in MVP voting, led the league in scoring. I mean, right now he's playing at least as well as he did in his unanimous MVP season of 2015-16. I mean, he's right there as a player comparable to what he was 5-6 years ago. I mean, the guy's averaging over 6 rebounds a game, and he's 6'3". He's averaging over 6 assists per game, even getting more engaged defensively. He's not a great defensive player, but he kind of gets in the way. But it does seem that things are fitting together. Again, it is a small sample, Jet, because it's only 14 games. And like you said, they had the easiest schedule in the NBA. The second easiest schedule has been the Lakers, and they're 8-7 compared to the Golden State Warriors. They're trying to integrate all these players. And again, can there be 2 more different players than Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook? I mean, Curry makes everything around him better. And to me, Westbrook kind of gets in the way and makes it worse. But I think that that's part of why Golden State's really played this year. I think they're going to be right up there all season long. I'm not saying, again, a 70-win team, but when you get to the playoffs, they're going to be a tough out no matter where they're seated.
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference to me is that they've added a lot of depth on the team.
Mhm.
I actually think they might be. You could make a strong case of the deepest team in the league.
Mhm.
I really like. They have Otto Porter Jr., who
Yep.
it's not going to do anything spectacular, but he's a very solid veteran player. They got him on the veterans minimum. You mentioned Iguodala. Bielitsa again he's not going to do a whole lot, but he can stretch the floor and rebound a little bit. He's a veteran player. Juan Toscano Anderson, you saw last year show some moments. Gary Payton, the second, Gary Payton Jr., whatever you want to call him. He's been around the league now a little while, and he's very athletic, and he's showing stuff. So like they roll really really deep,
Mhm.
and I think that's really helpful, especially in the regular season, to be able to pull guys off your bench who know how to play the right way and contribute. So I think the Warriors have done a good job filling out the rest of their roster compared to last year, and it's helping a lot. And you also have to give credit to their player development and somebody like Jordan Poole, who has really developed a lot as
Mhm.
a player. They've done a good job developing Wiggins,
Mhm.
into being more comfortable with his role. We'll see what happens with like guys like Moody and Kuminga and Wiseman when he comes back, but their player development seems to be working really well in Golden State. And so let's talk about then Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, because they squared off last night. Obviously, these guys have been two of the best players in the league for better part of a decade now. Former teammates, Sap, and you asked the question, linear choice, who's had the better career to this point, Steph Curry or Kevin Durant? Who did you have in that?
This is a tough one, Jet. I mean, this is almost like saying Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle. I know I'm going with an old comparison there, or Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Just
That's
pick
an easy
any of
one.
the all-time great ones. Right. I mean, Brady, since Manning retired, Brady has gone on and won 3 more Super Bowls. I mean, at the time that Manning retired, it was 4-2. And let's not forget that Manning beat Brady 3 out of 4 in the AFC Championship game. So it was a little closer than it is now. I mean, Brady's lapped the field. But you get my point that it's a nice discussion. You know how I love to rank players historically. Right now, I have Kevin Durant as the 16th greatest player in the history of the sport, and I have Steph Curry as the 17th greatest player in the history of the sport. I don't know if I'm going to change that quite yet. When you look at it in a vacuum, right, I would say Kevin Durant over Steph Curry. He's 7 feet tall. Curry's 6'3". Curry's the greatest shooter in the history of the sport. I think Durant is the most unstoppable offensive force in terms of variety, right? How many times have I said this? He's an elite shooter and an elite scorer. I don't know if anybody's quite at that level in both of those abilities. There's Jordan and Kobe and LeBron were more scorers than shooters, and Shaq and Kareem and Wilt were dominant down low because of their sheer size and skill. But in terms of being a great shooter, not far behind Steph Curry, and then adding in the fact that you're 7 feet tall and can score from anywhere on the court, Durant to me is the most unstoppable force. So they're both great offensive players. I think Durant's a better defensive player by the fact that he's 9 inches taller. I don't think he's a great defensive player, but he's better than Steph Curry. He's not as great a rebounder as he should be. And I think Curry's a slightly better passer. I still would pick Kevin Durant. The thing that makes it difficult, Jet, is Curry did win a championship without Durant. Durant's never
Right.
won a championship without Curry. Curry has 2 league MVPs. Durant has 1. I think Curry is the easiest player to play with because he's so damn efficient and he doesn't need the ball all of the time. I mean, you're a basketball purist. Watching that guy play is magical in terms of the way he moves without the basketball. Like, I haven't seen a great player move without the basketball like Steph Curry in 50 years that I've been watching the game. I mean, he doesn't need the ball. He moves great without it. He puts so much stress on your defense. And I think the fact that you're picking him up 35, 40 feet away from the basket and double teaming him without him having the basketball just opens up the court for everyone else. Now, Durant does the same thing because, from half court in, he's in scoring position. I'd still take Durant slightly over Curry, but it is close. And I think both of those guys are going to move up in my power rankings or all-time listings as they continue to play. They're both 33. They don't look like they're going anywhere, right? I mean, they're the 2 leading contenders for MVP. 11 through 15 on my list is Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, Moses Malone, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Shaq. They can surpass those guys. Now, can they get into the top 10? Yeah, they can, because at number 10 is Oscar Robertson. If Durant wins another title, if Curry wins another title, you may have to jump them both over Oscar Robertson, and they could kind of crashed the top 10 right near Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan. I don't think they'll ever get to the Bird, Magic, Wilt level. We'll see if they're still putting up these numbers 5-6 years from now. Maybe we can have that discussion. Slightly Durant over Curry, but it is razor close. And I do think that Curry's easier to, and I also think he's a better leader than Durant. Durant is a guy who just likes the ball, right? And I think Curry does too. But Curry seems to impact the team, the culture of the team, more so than Durant. I think he's a better leader. So that really makes it ever so close. You can't go wrong with either one. I would just give a slight edge to Durant because you know what? Size matters. He's 7 feet tall, Curry's 6'3". That's about the biggest difference.
Yeah, to me, I like the way you phrased the question because I think if it was a simple question of who's the better player, I would say Kevin Durant because, like you said, he's bigger. He can score in more ways because he's bigger. But you asked who's had the better career, which I think is really, really interesting. And ultimately, that's sort of what you judge things by is who's had the better career. That's how we come up with, these top all-time lists. And that's where it gets really, 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 really close. Like you said, 2 championships for Durant, 3 for Curry. Curry obviously won one without Durant. Durant's won both of his with Curry. 11 All-Star appearances for Durant, 7 for Curry, and then 2 MVPs for Curry, 1 MVP for Durant. And, you can go on and on and on about the accolades.
Yeah, four scoring titles for Durant, 2 for Curry. And with all of that, winning scoring titles, being that efficient, that's like Allen Iverson won scoring titles. He was never very efficient, right? I think Carmelo won a scoring title, not very efficient. Jordan won 10 scoring titles, efficient. That's why he and LeBron are the 2 greatest players ever. So even that, they're so close, right? With all these scoring titles without putting up a lot of shots. I mean, there was a game last week, Jet, that I believe Durant took 12 shots and scored 31 points. Like, that doesn't even make sense. And it's not like he went to the line a lot. I think he was 9 for 12 from the floor and 7 of 8 from 3. It was just like, my Lord, if this guy had a gun mentality, a Hun mentality like Carmelo Anthony or Russell Westbrook, Durant would put up numbers that would be astronomical. He doesn't even have that type of DNA. I mean, he's a killer, he's a sniper and all that stuff, but he's so efficient. Same thing with Curry. These guys score without taking a lot of shots, which really makes them all that much better than really the other guys we're comparing them to.
Right. And just even this year, Sap, I mean, just to talk about how razor close they are, Steph Curry, 28 points a game, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Kevin Durant, almost 29 points a game, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. Pretty damn close. Steph Curry's player efficiency rating this year, I love those stats. 29.58, second in the NBA. Kevin Durant, 29.50, third in the NBA. I mean, they are neck and neck in basically every single way. Steph Curry, a better 3-point shooter than Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, a better more varied scorer than Steph Curry. There's really not a lot separating the two guys. So it's becomes basically the question is so good because there's not a wrong answer.
No, there really isn't. I mean, it's difficult. Again, it's Mays, Mantle, pick anyone else. It's Gretzky, Lemieux, or, I'm going way back here, but these 2 guys are all-time great. So I have no problem in doing that. I'll use a comp today in football, and I love making cross-sport references. I know a lot of people don't, but I think it kind of can really push home what you're trying to say. Steph Curry is Patrick Mahomes, Kevin Durant's Aaron Rodgers. So, like, who would you rather have at quarterback, Rodgers or Mahomes? That's a fair discussion. Brady, to me, is in a different class. I mean, accomplishments
you can't put him in there.
Brady's in a whole different league for, kind of like even today, LeBron has had a better career than Steph or Durant. That's not even
you can't put him in there either. There's some guys who are anomalies.
Right. Let's just take Brady, LeBron. Let's push them off to the side. Let's not start comparing people to them. But Durant to me is Aaron Rodgers and Steph is Patrick Mahomes to the point where, every 10-year-old that you talk to, favorite quarterback's Patrick Mahomes, favorite basketball player is Steph Curry. Sure. The impact Curry's had is greater than Durant's because he's changed the way the game's played.
Yes.
Like, girls love Steph Curry because they kind of feel like, I can kind of do what he does. He's not a huge guy. He's a great shooter. I mean, you can't be Kevin Durant. There aren't 7-foot guys walking on the planet with all of that skill set. You can't be LeBron James, 6'9", 260 with that incredible IQ on the basketball court. Steph Curry looks like a guy you might see at the playground. 6'3",
Right.
190 pounds. There's no guy
Yeah.
like him, but you get the point. Like you would say, that's why I always say he and Kyrie Irving are the two guys I'd want to be as basketball players, because you'd see them on the court. Kyrie's 6'2", Steph 6'3", and their skill levels like through the roof. Curry's skill level even greater than Kyrie's, or it's pretty close. But then you take all the other stuff that Curry gives you that Kyrie doesn't give you: the leadership, dependability, just all of that stuff, maturity. And that's where he also is very, very important as a leader, right? Because I just think he just is. I think he's the easiest guy to play with. It just doesn't seem like it's a problem to play with Steph Curry. Durant didn't even have a problem with him, and Durant can be, a handful. All I can say is, Jet, thank God they didn't stick together, because I don't know how many titles they would have won.
It would have been ridiculous.
It would have been
ridiculous.
scary. I mean, because they almost pulled it off against Toronto with Curry playing hurt, Klay Thompson getting hurt, and Durant playing 12 minutes in that series, and they almost won that one. Like, if they'd stuck together for 10 years, they would have won 7 or 8 titles together. It would have been like laughable.
Yeah, that's what's still haunting, Durant, I think, to this day, is that, everybody recognized that at the time of the signing. It was ridiculous and unfair in terms of the pairing. And had Durant wanted to stay, they would have just kept ripping off titles without a doubt. I mean, even with Klay Thompson going down, they would have won the title the past couple of years.
Andrew Wiggins would have been a fine number 3 with them. Really,
they would have been fine.
Yeah, they would have been fine. You and I could have been the 4th and on those teams, again, because they're so efficient, easy to play with. It's not a tough fit with those two guys, because their games are seamless and they're easy to play with.
So, Sap, in terms of this
Who'd you
year,
pick? Who did you vote for?
Man, I think Curry has had slightly a better career. I think Kevin Durant is a slightly better player.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of there with you, only because of the fact that Curry does have 2 MVPs, Durant 1, although that's sometimes out of their hands. A couple of years ago, Giannis won an MVP, and we both thought LeBron should have won it. So the MVPs, look, Jordan should have won 10 instead of 6, and LeBron should have, 7 instead of 4.
Yeah, it happens. Like Kobe had 1.
Kobe has
career.
1. There's a lot of great players that have exactly 1 MVP. Yeah, Kobe and Durant are probably the 2 greatest players with just 1 MVP.
Right.
And Shaq only has 1. Come on. Steve Nash has 2. One of those should have went to Shaq. So I can't hold that against Durant. He probably should have more MVPs. And both guys, the only knock you can have is they're not the most durable guys, right? I mean, if that's where we're finding fault with them, then we're really, getting very picky. That's about it.
And Sap, what I think is also really interesting about the question is that I do think this year presents an opportunity for either one of those guys to potentially separate themselves a little more from the other,
Mm-hmm.
right? If Curry is able to win a championship this year, having sustained, a winning team without Klay Thompson for about half the year, give or take, we don't know when he's coming back. And after last year being disappointing for them, I think that really helps elevate him above Durant in that argument. Or if Durant's able to drag this Nets team and without Kyrie Irving, who's flaked on him this year, I think that really you could say, okay, that really elevates him over. So either way, if one of those 2 teams wins the title this year, it would be the best title on their resume so far, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, because Curry's now 33. The title he won without Durant, he was 6 years younger, so he was 27 and was new.
And Klay was in his prime, and Draymond was in his prime.
Yeah, and Iguodala was the MVP of the finals in that
so a much different team.
Series. Yeah, so this would be the most rewarding of all the championships. And the same thing with Durant, because no one could say, well, he just joined Steph and Klay and Draymond and Golden State. Now he's dragging a team without Kyrie Irving. Who the hell knows what he's going to do? And also James Harden looks like he's aged 10 years and put on 20 pounds since last year. I mean, I was watching that game last night, Golden State Brooklyn game, and it was frustrating watching James Harden. I think he got Durant out of Durant's rhythm. Durant was unstoppable in the first quarter, and for some reason they didn't go back to him. Right, and that's one thing I like about Durant. He's not like a prick on the court. Like if Kobe or Michael got off to that type of start, they would demand the freaking basketball. Durant's not that guy, and I like that about him, because I think he's easy to play with, but he's not quite the alpha that those guys were, right? I think he's more talented as a scorer, not as an all-around player, as a scorer. But Harden really screwed up last night because it just seemed like he decided he was going to monopolize the ball, and it got Durant out of his rhythm. And, once the third quarter came about, it was over because Golden State just blows doors in the third quarter, just like they did in their prime. That's what scares me. They make adjustments at halftime and they come out and jump on teams.
Yeah, and unlike the Celtics, they hold on to leads, which is a good thing to be able to do.
Man.
Yep. This is a discussion for another day before we just wrap up, Sap. But I agree with you that Curry has changed the game more than anybody since Wilt Chamberlain in terms of how it's played. The NBA did change the rules at one point as a result of Wilt Chamberlain. I think this is an interesting podcast for another day. Should the NBA change the 3-point rules a little bit as a result of Steph Curry, widening the court, making it a little deeper? Just food for thought.
Let's discuss it in a future podcast. That's absolutely a great topic. Let's not give away our answers right now, because that's going to take some deep diving on both of our parts, but very interesting question.
All right. I'm good at interesting questions. I'm glad that
you certainly are.
Bring that to the table. That's something I can do. But that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. As always, we're presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. That's where Sap has all those great poll questions. The one today that spurred the whole show, that was on his Twitter. If you want to get early previews of what shows might be about, check out Sap's Twitter. My Twitter is mostly complaining about the Celtics these days. That's what it's sort of evolved into. But make sure you check those out, and we'll be back later with another podcast. And later in the week, we're going to be talking about the Celtics and the Lakers as they meet up on Friday. So make sure you tuned into all the latest on the show, and we'll talk to you later. See you, everybody.